So any effort that you make towards weight loss is a good thing. And you're going to try all kinds of stuff to reach your goal. You'll work out, change the way you eat. You might even start going to saunas to shed some extra weight. And all of these things can work, but each of these things can also fail if you don't have a good understanding of how to manage setbacks. And more importantly, a good understanding of why setbacks happen. Now I want to start this off with a little story because something happened last week. During the stream last week, I made 2 mistakes. One was very obvious and one was like a little bit less obvious. So I'll tell you about the one that was less obvious first. This mouse, it's chargeable, and I was still plugged in when I started the stream. I didn't realize, and so I couldn't move it around. So I tried to unplug it and totally messed up my slides and my everything. It was just like everything was all over the place. And so I'm talking to you guys and I'm trying to fix my slides at the same time and like find my place on my outline. So did you notice? I didn't have anyone complaining, but okay. The second mistake that I made, because I went then to go to my slide, and when I went to my slide, I scrolled forward. No, I didn't just play slide 1, I played a few slides. These 2 mistakes happened within the first minute of starting the stream. Now, I've had other live streams where I've made mistakes. For example, starting my live stream and there's no audio and you can't hear what I'm saying. And I've also had times where I started live streams or been in the middle of a live stream actually, and someone knocks on the door to deliver a package. I've even had scenarios where I start my live and things are kind of going crazy and I realize my internet's not working and you're getting like spotty views and I have to restart the whole thing, create a brand new live stream just to get back on. And I sincerely believe that on those occasions, I probably streamed a good half an hour later than I said I was going to start. And each of the times, you guys stuck with me. I found a way to correct the problem and you guys were right there with me. And well, okay, some of them were very obvious, but some of them didn't even seem to matter to you guys, and there was no comment at all. These were issues that I could not have predicted, right? I had to think on the spot, how am I solving this? And one thing that I want to share with you is that after experiencing the same problem repeatedly, so the scrolling forward through my slides, despite the fact that no one complains about it, I was looking for a solution because it was something that was bothering me. And that's when I was having a conversation in the Wellness Squad, wellnesssquad.org, you should check it out. And I got called out on this idea that my streams do not need to be perfect. I don't need to be so hard on myself. And the fact that I know that by the time I was having this conversation in the squad and I was kind of using it as maybe a way to motivate people, just talking about what happened to me. But at the moment when I was having that conversation, I wasn't bothered by it anymore. I really had to stop and check with myself. In the moment when it was happening, was I embarrassed? Or was I feeling like my streams needed to be perfect? Or was it just something that I'm looking for a solution for because it bothers me? And what I realized is that, yes, in the moment, on the spot, when it was happening, I was operating out of fear. So yes, I was being a little bit, I guess, perfectionistic because in this world of YouTube and online and trying to get your message out and trying to help as many people as I'm trying to help, I know that if I mess up the beginning of my video, it doesn't get as much reach. And I had just messed it up. And so, of course, there's a part of me that's thinking, oh no, right? But setbacks are normal. And even though I've messed up videos before, you guys come back. So why I'm talking about this today is because setbacks are normal. And that means they're going to happen in dieting too. And a setback doesn't have to be a failure, right? We can see the setback and then see it as an opportunity for growth. But in order to do that, we need to see that the setback is a setback. So I hadn't let myself take the 5 seconds to realize that, yes, when these things are happening, I'm kind of freaking out because I want to help as many people as I possibly can, and this is going to mess with my plans. And so I appreciate being told that, yes, Violet, look what you're doing, because I still solved the problem, right? And that was what the point of what I said to the community. But it also allowed me to see that that's part of the reason, and I want to share that with you. That's part of the reason that I'm able to solve problems for my health as well. Because as much as in the moment it bothered me, and maybe I was being a little bit perfectionistic because I know how things go wrong when the beginning of the video doesn't work well, I took that feeling and channeled it into solve this problem, Violet. Don't let it keep happening to you, because it's actually frustrating when it happens to you and then you're freaking out. And then does your stream really go well? So what are the things that could be setbacks in the diet world that cause us to then not live the rest of our day well? And as I was thinking about this, I realized that there's a wide spectrum that can be happening here. Because it could be something like thinking about eating the wrong food or going out to buy the wrong food or going like that. Those thoughts that come to us and they kind of torment us because I want the chocolate bar or the cookies or the whatever. It could be eating the chocolate bar or the cookie or the whatever. Or it could be as far as I've regained 10, 15, 20 pounds. Maybe I've regained all the weight. I need us to understand that each one of those things are setbacks just on a spectrum from mild to, oh no. And by understanding that, then we can actually realize that I don't need to wait till the weight is resumed to start working on growing from these setbacks. So if I talk about myself, when I'm thinking about buying nuts, I'm in the middle of a setback, right? Because I know what happens when I buy nuts. First of all, I never buy a serving because you can't really just walk into the store and buy a serving. And even single serving packages are not a serving. So it would not be possible for me to buy a serving. But then once I start eating cashews, well, they just go down. And now maybe I'm eating 2 servings or 3 servings or 4 servings. So because remember, a serving is about 30 grams, if I remember correctly. It's not a lot of nuts, right? So if I don't let myself see that I'm in the middle of something when that's happening to me, I'm not going to take the time to even check what was I thinking about, right? What was it that I was thinking, or what was it that I was doing, or what was it that I was feeling before I had the thought, I want to go get some nuts? Because the truth is that self-soothing behavior that I do, because I'm not eating nuts because, and this is what's tricky, Wellness Warrior. I'm not eating nuts because I like nuts. Because I don't like nuts more than I like feeling good. So that's another part of the problem that we live, is that we have this idea that when I think I want nuts, it's equivalent to I just wanted nuts. No, because I know when I eat nuts, I'm going to go out of control. You know, when you eat cookies or cake or chocolate or whatever, you're going to get out of control. So the fact that you're even thinking about eating those things tells you something's wrong. If someone's constantly craving a drink, right? We don't just say, oh, they just love bourbon or they just love beer. No, if they're constantly craving a drink, especially if they're constantly craving it after a hard day at work or after a fight with their spouse or their kids aren't listening or whatever the problem, if that's when you find yourself craving a drink, then we start to look at you and say, hey, come on, maybe there's something else going on. Because drinking all the time isn't good for your health. And neither is eating junk food. Okay, what do we consider all the time? I think that we would all agree that somebody who is drinking every single day has a problem. Okay, I think we would all agree that someone who's drinking every other day probably still has a problem. Okay, but I would even give you that if I have a person who, even if they're drinking once a week, but they feel compelled to have that drink, we would still say, well, yeah, of course, if you're drinking once a week because you feel like you have to, yeah, you still have a problem. Wellness warrior, how many of us fall into that story when it comes to junk food? That we might be able to do good during the week because we're busy and we're active and we're doing stuff and we're around people, but then the weekend comes and we can't do it, right? We have to have something. Here's the problem. In our society, we tell ourselves a story that we're supposed to relax on the weekend. We're supposed to have treats on the weekend. We're supposed to we don't have to stick to our diet on the weekend. This is the story that we're told. And because we all live in this world with the same stories floating around us, we end up doing it. When I realized that I was more likely to want nuts when I had a hard day at work or frustrating interaction with the kids or my spouse, or I was able to realize that it was the way that I was self-soothing. And we, again, live in this world that makes us believe that self-soothing is actually the way to go. And I'm not saying that we're not supposed to take care of ourselves. Let's be careful. I want to make sure I say this properly. I'm not saying that. When I'm taking care of myself, it's about I want to feel good about being me. But when I'm self-soothing with insert whatever vice you have, it's about there's something happening in the world that I should be addressing, but instead of addressing it, I'm eating this thing or drinking this thing or doing this action or whatever and it's not actually changing the situation at hand. Why is that a problem? Well, because after I finished eating the nuts, the problem's still there. I start feeling bad again. Well, what options do I have? Well, I'll eat some more nuts, or maybe I'll video game, or maybe I'll drink some. But is it changing the fact that the problem's still there? Not at all. Distracting myself isn't the answer, right? I need us to also see that sometimes we think that if I didn't gain weight, it doesn't matter. Right? So I ate some nuts. I didn't put on weight. It's okay. Is it reality that because I didn't gain weight, that nothing else is happening internally with me? And again, if I'm eating cookies or ice cream or whatever, but I'm a good weight, that doesn't necessarily mean that those cookies or ice creams or whatever aren't harming me internally, which we know. If I'm allowing myself to think about something as a way to not engage the other thing, I'm still not advancing my life. And ultimately, if I want my life to be happy all round, my happiness is not only going to come from food. It's not only going to come from video games. It's not only going to come from whatever vice I have. And usually we have more than one, by the way. Can I just point that out? I'm saying this out loud because I think sometimes what happens is that we don't realize that because we have more than one vice and we can kind of shift things around, that when it gets back to food and we say, oh, it doesn't really matter, and we engage with it, and we are then stuck in a situation for maybe days, maybe weeks, or maybe we don't even go back to eating healthy, that yes, that all has an impact, because it's not just impacting the fact that I didn't solve the problem. Now it's impacting how do I feel about my ability to do what's better for me. And if I don't believe in myself that I can actually do what's better for me, then I really won't even try to solve the problem. So I end up eating the stuff that's hurting me and falsely believing that I cannot solve this problem that I absolutely could be solving. Now, will I solve it perfectly first shot? Probably not. Will I solve it easily? Probably not. But are most things that are happening in our life solvable? Absolutely. Most things are. Do we always like the solution? No, not all the time. Sometimes we hate the solution, right? Sometimes we detest the solution. If I don't get my health under control, and then 5 years from now, I have a heart attack, and the only way to keep me alive is a surgery, the chances are I'm going to hate that answer, but it would be the answer. And I think this is part of the reason that we are also in trouble, because we are very good at distracting ourselves from problems, because again, that's what we've been taught. Don't worry about it. Don't pay attention to it. It's not a big deal. That bothers you? Why do you focus on that? These are all things that we hear a lot. We focus on things that bother us because they bother us. And what we should do is find a way to make them less bothersome. Now, if I do that, then things run more smoothly. You're probably thinking that I solved the slides issue by just not having slides today. That actually isn't what it was. I did solve the slide issue by creating a new setup that would allow me to do my slides properly, which I can't test today because I don't have any slides. But I'm saying that out loud right now because the truth is, we rarely eat the wrong food because we are feeling that we want that food, because we know that the wrong food, by this stage of the game, we know is causing our weight to go up, our inflammation, our pain, and all the health problems that we have. By this stage in the game, we know that. If I have weight to lose, I cannot lie to myself and say that eating cookies is helping me lose weight, right? Like, I know that. I'm eating the cookies because somehow something in my day didn't go right, and I'm upset about it. And I'm using the cookies to self-soothe and to distract myself from that thing that didn't go well. And I will have to do that 15 more times today if that's the way that I'm managing this situation. However, if I could actually, when I even think about getting cookies, which is the beginning of the setback, right? That's setback number 1. But if I can pay attention to the fact that, oh my gosh, I just thought about getting nuts. What's going on? Then I would very likely be able, because I didn't go get the nuts, sit in my feelings and see that, oh, that thing that just happened bothered me, or even, oh, that thing from this morning is still bothering me, or even that thing from yesterday is still bothering me, because yes, sometimes the problem didn't happen right now. And I'm still upset about it. And I'm distracting myself with food and making myself feel better because the food tastes good. And honestly, I'm not going to say that you don't feel better, because you do. In that moment, you feel better. It tastes good. It's setting off dopamine. It's setting off serotonin. It's setting off feelings that actually make you physically have less pain. There's a lot of stuff happening when we eat garbage. But the flip side of the coin is, once that sugar is in me, then I'm feeling inflammation issues. And that's my story. My weight's rising because no matter who you are, if you overeat sugar, some of it's getting stored as fat. It might not be enough to show on the scale in a month or a year, but in a few years, at some point, weight is rising. So each person is going to live the story a little differently, but always towards the same negative outcome, which is, I haven't solved the thing in my real world that was causing me to do this bad behavior, number one, and number two, ruining my health. Distracting yourself is never the answer. Magical cures that come from us believing that if you just eat this, then you can erase the effects of having eaten that. I've heard that story so many times. Oh, if you eat carbs alongside, if I've eaten carbs, I've eaten carbs. Eating it alongside X, Y, or Z is not going to erase the fact that I've eaten carbs. I want us to be realistic with ourselves, because we have this magical thinking that happens that says that, oh, I can eat this stuff and then I can exercise. And no, I still ate it. And the negative impact it has on my body, getting fat stored in fat storage, harming my arteries, and causing inflammation and causing all kinds, setting off cortisol, which causing me to have emotional problems. Not every problem looks the same for every person. And we need to really look at, how do I feel when I do well and I eat properly and I sleep enough and I get the right amount of exercise and I do all the things that are positive for my body, versus how do I feel when I let myself overeat, not sleep enough, and do all the outcome for you will be like visible, and it will be felt, and we need to learn to actually pay attention. When I'm telling myself, or when society is telling me, when I'm telling myself, because it's both of them, that I shouldn't be bothered by this, that I shouldn't be worrying about this, that I can just push it aside and move forward because that's what everybody else does. What do I do about my feelings? This is hard. This topic is coming up because I watched a video and they were talking about perfectionism, and so many people are in the world talking about perfectionism in this way that makes it seem like, first of all, it's some kind of catalyst to doing better in life, or that it's this thing that only causes us to fail because we don't know how to manage it better. When in fact, when I'm trying to do something perfectly, when I'm trying to avoid setbacks, when I'm trying to not deal with what's in front of me, it's because there's real problems in my life that I don't know how to manage. It's because I don't think that I can solve a problem. And perfectionism shows itself because, and we only look at the one side of the coin when we talk about perfectionism, because there's two sides of the coin. Whenever I talk to someone who's perfectionistic, it's not just everything needs to be perfect and all the time. That's not what's happening. It's, if it's not perfect, I'm not doing it. That's what's happening. If it's not perfect, it's not worthy. I don't put it out into the world. If it's not perfect, why am I even going to start? And how many of us have lived that? If I don't have the perfect meal plan for the whole week, then what's the point of me eating keto? If I don't have the perfect workout routine, what's the point of me going to the gym? I need to know exactly what you eat, Violet. I hear that all the time. Why? You're not going to like what I eat. Okay, anyways, I'm getting off topic. Here we go again. So what do I do with my feelings? Right? I'm trying to get you to understand that even if I make myself feel better, if the problem is still there, I haven't changed anything, I will feel bad eventually. Because what I need to do is address whatever problem. If it's the person that I need to talk to because maybe we are not getting along, then I go talk to that person. If it's a situation at work that needs to change because it's making my work life harder, then I need to go into work and talk to my manager or my boss or my whoever and get it to be changed. Right? We need to learn to stand up for ourselves and understand that if I'm going to change my life, if I want my life to be happy, I need to change things. And we need to understand that eating the garbage food is not doing anything towards solving the actual problem that we need to change, that we want to change, that would be great if it changed that, right? But when we change things, when we actually change things, that's when we will notice that that pull towards eating the garbage isn't there. That pull towards everything being perfect isn't there because it wasn't real. It wasn't really about it being perfect. It was about controlling something when I feel like I don't have control of that thing. But that's, again, magical thinking. If I control this, I'm going to feel better. Well, that doesn't change the fact that that thing is still happening, Wellness Warrior. The truth is, you want to feel good. As do I. You want to solve problems. As do I. But sometimes the solutions are not obvious. What does that mean? That means that it's not that I can just say, snap my fingers, that's the answer. Sometimes I have to think on it. Sometimes I have to work on it. Sometimes I will try 17 things before I get to the answer that's going to make sense. And are we doing that? We live in a society that is teaching us to avoid painful situations at all costs. And we're taught to just shut down the feelings. Just don't think about it. Don't feel it. I need you to understand that you live in here, right? You live in here. You live in here. You are going to feel it. You are going to remember it. You are going to struggle with that situation, whether or not you're touching it right now. That's why something could have happened 3 days ago and it's causing you to, or causing me to eat nuts today. Because that thing from 3 days ago is still bugging me. And I'm eating nuts today. And if I don't stop and think about why am I chasing right now, I'm not going to figure it out. Right? I'm not saying that the initial time that I ate nuts was because of a problem. I'm not saying that. Because I used to think that nuts were healthy and not a problem for me. Right? For some people, they're not a problem. For me, they are because I end up overeating them. And that's the problem we're talking about today. Right? We're talking about the fact that if I don't understand that there's problems in my world that push me towards these setbacks, then I don't change this. Because the only way to change this is to realize that the setback isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening because I'm living my life and something is going wrong that I didn't put my finger on, so then I didn't solve it. Now my self-soothing needs to happen because I don't feel good. It's not always obvious, Wellness Warrior. But the problem is that we live in this world that says shut down those feelings as fast as possible. Make yourself feel better. Have a smile on all of the time, because heaven forbid that somebody knows that you're upset. And if you're a man, oh my goodness, you better not cry. Heaven forbid that somebody see you cry. And then we push the whole event aside, right? We don't even take the time to notice, because heaven forbid somebody see me upset. And yes, I had to acknowledge to myself that last week during the stream, I did that. So after how many years of knowing that that's not the answer, in the stream, I did that. So if we don't allow ourselves to step back and look at when are these things happening, we can't fix them, right? I'm very appreciative that Sing It called me out and said, hey, look what you're doing. Very appreciative, because it got me to step back and say, you know what? The truth is, in the moment, I was freaking out. And now I can solve that. Because it's one video. If one video doesn't do well, whatever, right? And that's the truth. It's not about the one video. It's about the message that I'm trying to give. And the people that care to hear the message are not going to mind that I screwed up at the beginning of the video, right? And the people that don't care to hear the message, the people that don't know me yet, maybe they have the opportunity to see another one of my videos where it went more smoothly. But I needed to pause and let myself think about the fact that that's the truth, right? That I was freaking out, and that in the future, I'm going to try my best that if I make a mistake, not to freak out about it, because it doesn't help me to solve the problem. It actually makes solving the problem worse. Because as I was sitting there fiddling with this and then trying to get back to where I was on the screen, was I speaking the way that I normally would speak? No, right? When I rewatched it, I could see that I wasn't speaking like me. And that bugs me more, right? It would have been great if I would have just said, I messed that up. Okay, give me a second while I get back myself on track. That would have been great. And it would have made the transition back to talking easier, instead of it sounding like rushed and hurried because, right? And so I realized, by looking at what she told me about, I realized that I wasn't allowing myself to make a mistake because I'm so focused on getting this message out. But I easily could have just asked you guys to bear with me, because what I'm talking about is really important. And I want to give you this message, and I want to give it to you clearly. So let me get myself back on track before I keep talking. I could have said that, right? And I just thought of that right now. Again, a lot of the times the things we need to solve are going to happen in a moment where we didn't know we were going to need to solve it. Somebody is going to walk up to you when you weren't expecting it and offer you cookies because it's so-and-so's birthday today and we're all having cookies. That's not in the plan, right? Do I feel different from everybody if I say no? Some of us would. And then it causes us to not want to be embarrassed. And so, I say yes to the cookie. And there's all this stuff that happens. And it's like, do I realize, and I step back from a situation and say, my fear of being different just caused me to eat something that I know is off plan. Or it could even be more sneaky, the way our society works. Yay, somebody offered me cookies. Here's my excuse to eat off plan, right? Because we all get treats once in a while, right? It's normal to step off your diet once. Do we see where if we don't really know what we want for ourselves, then we can be hijacked, and there can be setbacks that they're not me doing the wrong thing. They're me making mistakes because the setback is happening. I'm thinking about it. That's the step one of the setback. I'm thinking about doing this thing that I know isn't good for me. And the world around me isn't helping me to think clearly, right? It's actually cluttering my thoughts. And then we end up self-soothing with food over and over and over again. We end up not solving our lives' problems. We end up being hurt by the fact that we didn't solve the problem, hurt by the weight that we're gaining. And whenever we feel hurt, we want to self-soothe. And so we're in this vicious cycle. And there is a solution. The solution starts, though, before food, because the solution isn't about food or video games or alcohol or whatever the self-soothe thing is that you do. The solution is not about that. The solution is believing in myself. So, Wellness Warrior, I want you to believe in yourself, that you're strong enough to face any challenge that happens in your life. And then I want you to also believe that you're strong enough, smart enough, clear enough, focused enough to solve. And this isn't easy because you're going to be afraid and emotional, right? Afraid to make a mistake, afraid to look like a fool, afraid that people are going to know that you failed, afraid. You're going to be emotional because problems by definition are problems because they hurt us. They upset us in some way. And if the issue that you're trying to solve involves another person, that's another level of problem, right? Because the solution you put forward, they might not agree with. And now we're going back and forth. And am I comfortable in confrontation situations? Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Chances are, if you're having this issue, you're not. There are so many layers to this, but it all starts with you having some belief in yourself that you can solve. Because the other person, if there is another person involved, is not going to solve for you, right? They're solving for themselves. You need to learn how to negotiate and potentially even push for the solution that works for you. Recently, in my office building, they sent me a renewal with an insanely high percentage added to my rent. And I had an option. I could have just got angry and cried and eaten something and paid it. Or what I did after getting angry was I got up and I went down to see them. And we had a chat. And you can imagine that I was really stressed about going down and having that chat because, I mean, it's not like I don't know that the price of things have gone up, but the amount that they were putting, it was not computing for me. And after about a 45-minute conversation, we settled on a number that made me feel more comfortable. I focused on solving the problem, right? And with the new solution, I was able to go back and go back to work, right? Versus being stressed. Sometimes we don't realize that that is not just the best option, it's the only option if the goal you have for yourself is to be able to move on with your day and feel comfortable about what that solution was. Because if I don't do that, then what I'm doing is I'm moving on with my day, hating the solution that I left there. Because if you don't do anything about it, Wellness Warrior, then that's the solution. And I need you to understand that. If I don't do anything about the problem that's in front of me, if I just swallow it every time, then what I'm actually doing is saying that's the solution that I'm leaving there. Has that ever happened to you? Right? Have you ever been in a situation where you just walked away and let it be? That's the solution that's going to happen? Now, have there been any of you that saw that and said, nope, I know that's going to make me want to eat or drink or whatever, and you said, no, I have to solve it, I'm on this, let me know that too. I'd love to know. But the answer isn't indulging your cravings. So this message is really important. So I'm actually going to ask a favor that I don't usually ask, but I want you to like the video. All right? Before you go to the next video, which is linked in the description, I want you to like the video because I need more people to understand this, because it drives me crazy when I see this topic being discussed in a way that doesn't allow us to actually change what's happening. Right? The answer is solve the original problem. Okay. So I do see that there are some people here. For Jesse, thank you again. I want to thank you for last week's super chat or sticker. I'm not sure if I think it's a sticker, and for last week as well. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I don't see a question attached to it, so I think it's a super sticker. So hello, sing it, Pat. Hello. And I'm going to see if there's questions. I would love to answer some questions. I'm going to be here for a little while answering questions, hopefully. So QQQ in front just to make sure that I can tell that they're questions. But I'm just going to look at I'm going to look at a few of these. So Sing It is asking, so there's no such thing as a sweet tooth. It's always chasing from carbs, overloaded, emotional soothing, just a product of habit. So I'm going to agree with that statement that a sweet tooth, so just to turn it on its head, this is the same thing as saying, so then I have a savory tooth, or then I have a salt tooth, right? People like different things, like in terms of flavor is one thing. But when we use this idea of, I just have a sweet tooth, and usually the word just is in there, by the way, as I'm saying it out loud, I just have a sweet tooth. We're usually using that as a way to talk about how we allow ourselves to eat the wrong thing. By the way, I just want to point out that I actually did get something to help me with this. We'll see if this... So I did get something to help me to maybe not make that mistake next time. I just didn't have any slides today. So let's try this camera and see if it helps me to answer the questions a little better. So sweet tooth is something that I think it's a way for companies to make us believe that we don't have control over what we're eating, and so therefore, of course, you're gonna eat the thing, right? Okay, I'm not gonna do it this time. I just realized my camera for some reason is backwards on this one, and I was about to just pretend like it wasn't happening, but you see, I'm learning. My camera's backwards. I don't know why, but I'll fix that for next time. Okay, so good morning, wellness warriors. That's Pat. Let's see. Do we have a sweet tooth? Yeah. Perfectionism. I don't see many questions today. Jesse, thanks for these videos. I especially appreciate the psychological and addiction info and support. Jesse, I'm very happy to give you that support. Michelle H, hello. Thanks for joining. I'm getting a message from Pat. I'm getting a message from Pat, and I'm just realizing that probably there's no audio or there's an echo. Okay. I see it now. There's an echo with that camera. So I switch back. But again, it's actually on topic for today. So I'm very happy to say that I'm glad that actually I see the mistake now. So anyways, I wasn't really ready to use that camera yet anyway, so haha on me. So do we have any questions, guys? Because I would love to answer some more questions. I'm just running through some of these other ideas that I'm seeing. So Michelle H, thanks for this channel. You have given more support than you know. Oh, thank you. 84 pounds and gained back 15. Well, so this is the thing. Can we problem solve why the 15 came back? What was happening in your life? That's where I would start. And what might still be happening that you're struggling with that then causes you to self-soothe. But we would also want to look at, are there things that maybe in terms of how you've been eating that might have changed, that now you're realizing that, so I might have changed a few things because I was at goal, and so I allow a few things back, not because I'm having an issue, but just because I believed that that was the thing to do, because again, many people do not see eating healthy as keto or carnivore or whatever diet you're doing. They don't see that as a long-term change that they're making. They see it as a temporary fix to solve something, right? So I don't know, Michelle, if you want to give a bit more information about like what happened there, but sometimes with more information, we can like kind of problem solve it together. And if you want to do that off YouTube, you can go to the communitywellnesssquad.org and we can have a little chat over there. So Singit has a question. So did you think about nuts and threw it out of your mind, both instances, or nuts never came up? Wondering if the first thought ever goes away. So interestingly, in this case, Singit, what I realized, because I didn't actually end up wanting nuts after this kerfuffle like that happened with the computer, because I do think at this point it was more like I had a problem that happened when I came out of the video, because it had happened. Oh my gosh, like how many times have you guys seen me scroll through my slides? Because it had happened so many times, I finally decided to bite the bullet. And I can actually show you what I did. I just went and got this little, I don't know if I can show it on the screen. It's not going to show. I just went and got this little device so that when I want to change things, like you saw how quickly I just changed that when Pat was calling me to tell me that there was a problem with my audio. And you did mention it too on the screen. I can just push a button and it's changed. So I didn't have the thought of nuts at that moment. How I figured it out was because I noticed that I was overeating nuts. And then I said, okay, I need to stop eating them. But then every time that I would find myself wanting them, it was on the heels of something went wrong at work, something went wrong with whatever. So like I was able to put it together that each time I was having some kind of struggle emotionally, that's what I was thinking of, versus when I'm not struggling emotionally, I'm not thinking about that at all. So this problem with the stream, it was less of an emotional struggle after the stream. So by the time I finished the stream, I wasn't in that space anymore because I had, at least for the moment, solved whatever. And then of course I just edited it out, so it wasn't no longer an issue that I was concerned about. But I do think that that first step of knowing that every time I'm doing something that I know is against my health, very likely it's because there's something else happening that I'm trying to avoid, right? I'm trying to distract myself from this problem with this thing. And that's what I'm trying to get you to think about, is how do I then make sure that I'm not distracting myself, I'm looking at the problem, and I'm finding true solutions to the problem. I hope that answers the question. So I don't see any other questions. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds because I don't know if there's something else you want to ask me about. But if there isn't, I just want to say that I'm actually very happy that I had the opportunity to talk about this today, because I think it's something that, like I said, I see the idea of why we run away from setbacks, why we don't address them, explained away so often, but we don't. It's rare that I see that our societal way of looking at problems is brought into the story. That people talk about the fact that from the very youngest of ages, because we tell children that they shouldn't cry for a different number of reasons that it's obvious that they should be crying about. And I think it's because we don't understand that it's normal for our kids to cry when they're not happy about what's going on for them. It's what they should be doing. So at this moment, I'm gonna, if I don't see any more questions, so I'm gonna get going because I do have to get ready for work. But this was a great conversation, and I'm really happy for you, Michelle, that you were able to So it says, what was the first thought with the rent situation? So my first thought with the rent situation was, how do I solve that number? And so I'm going to add to this, because I do this all the time. And what I mean by this is because I've already gone through my process of realizing that the different ways that I self-soothe myself. So for example, years ago, I realized, so before I did any kind of health to get myself into my current state, years ago, I realized that when I was upset, I would want pizza. That was just like my go-to. Now, keep in mind, I was having chocolate like almost every day. So this is not to say that I was doing anything good for myself. But back then, pizza was something I didn't have all the time. So whenever I would feel upset, I would want pizza for supper. And then I realized that. And that was one of the first times where I said, you know what, anytime I find myself wanting pizza like urgently, then I was going to check to see what was going on in my life. And that obviously passed forward through the way my life was going, that when I stopped having pizza because I stopped eating garbage, which would have been 5 years ago, what I started to see is that, now when I'm upset, if I don't notice what's bothering me. So, that's the other piece of the puzzle. Thank you for asking this question, because it helps me to answer more clearly. When I don't know what's bothering me is when, so maybe I think I've dealt with something, but I haven't fully dealt with it. And then I'll be living my day and all of a sudden I want nuts. And that's when I'll back up and go, wait, something is still bugging me. And like I said, sometimes it could be something from today or it could be something from 2 days ago. But I think that the important thing was that I had the opportunity to even know that that's what that means, because in my practice, I figured out that that's what people do, right? Yeah, I do feel like, so one advantage is to go talk to a psychologist and they're going to explain all this stuff to you. But I feel the other advantage is when we figure things out with our family and friends, not to let that go. I think sometimes what the problem is that we figure things out with our family and friends, like we see this on other people, by the way. I think if we all just sit still for 5 seconds and think, have you ever known someone who had a drinking problem and that as soon as the slightest thing went wrong was the first thing they said? I need a drink. Right? I need a drink. So we do see it and we are aware of it, but we have the flip side of the coin where we are tricked, I want to say, is that the word? But we're told this story that eating off plan is normal. So I've been asked multiple times, why is it that when I'm talking to people, I'm always so adamant in saying 20 grams of carbs or less, right? You shouldn't be aiming to go over. You shouldn't be aiming at the line. You should be aiming at less. And I'm so adamant in saying that, there's no breaks. There's no cheats. I'm so adamant in saying that. And the question is why? And it's because if I tell myself there's no breaks, even if I mess up, because I'm human, I might mess up. When I mess up, I see it, right? If I allow nuts into my day, and how is it knowing? Have I ever been able to do it and not overdo it? So if I allow nuts into my day, and even if I allow nuts into my day and for some miracle have a serving, I'm still questioning myself. Why did I do that? Because I might have one serving, but what's happening in my head right now? I want more. That is the beginning of the setback. The idea, the thought, the chasing that's happening in my head right now because I let them in. Right? And as soon as I let them in, I'm in this roller coaster, this struggle, this fight with me. Why would I want to do that to me? Right? Like, I kind of like me. So putting myself in that situation, it just doesn't make sense. So obviously something else is happening here for me to have put myself in this situation that I know now I'm fighting with me. Obviously something happened here. And so seeing it, that's part of this too, is that there is knowledge that we allow ourselves not to look at. I'll put it like that, right? Because we know when we do the behavior, it feels out of control. We know when we're doing the behavior, we don't like the outcome of how we feel or what our weight or what our emotional state or whatever is. And yet somehow we're doing it anyway. Right? Well, if I'm doing it anyway, it's telling me something. It's telling me that I'm not in control of this. And at that point, right? So I feel like you don't need 100% to have seen a psychologist to know this, because you've seen it on other people around you for sure by this point in life. But obviously talking to a psychologist is one of the easier ways that you can find all of the different ways that you might be doing this to yourself. Because like I said, most of us have more than one vice, right? Some of us, it's shopping, right? You're going to go out and spend money that you don't have and be in a bad situation because you're spending money that you don't have. And so I would really encourage you not to do that, right? Like, don't spend money that you don't have. But the best way to know and the best way to make that happen is to first acknowledge, when is it happening that I'm shopping to feel better versus normal shopping because, oh, I ripped my pair of pants. Okay, I need to buy a new pair of pants. Normal shopping, right? Versus just, so there's so many ways that we do it. Any other questions? And I really do hope I answered it properly this time because, actually, I think the other thing I'll add to that is that when I went down to talk to the administration, the interesting thing was there was a part of me that was not even sure that the person I was about to talk to could do anything about it anyways, because they're not the owner of the building, right? And so there was this interesting, like, well, I'm going to go have a conversation with somebody, but then will I have to have, like, how many more conversations will I need to have? And therefore, how many more days will I need to wait in limbo, not knowing if I can move forward or not, right? So I feel like that's another thing, is that sometimes we'll do an action, but then we are not sure if the action that we've just done is the solution or not. And that can leave us anxious because we don't know the answer yet, right? So we're just waiting. And what would I have done if I hadn't gotten a different answer? Well, what would I have done if the answer was, nope, that's what you have to pay? And although I didn't have to think about that as I'm sitting here now, it would be a matter of one of two things. It's either look at my finances and figure out, well, can I still afford this place even if the rent went up more than I think is fair? Or find another place. Those are the two answers that I have. Now, I don't know what would have come out of that and I don't need to know, because the person I talked to had a solution that worked for both of us. But Wellness Warrior, I think that the most important thing I'm trying to get you to see is that if I hadn't addressed it at all, I wouldn't have been able to either where I am now, know that that's the answer, or even investigated one of those other two possibilities to see what could I have happen. And even what we're doing right now, there's a lot of psychologists that are they're just only doing virtual, online, that's it, right? And if I did that, then I don't even need an office, right? But I have a goal of helping as many people as possible. And that means having an office because some people just aren't comfortable doing it this way. So, ultimately, I do think that everybody has decisions to make. And everybody has things that they need to do to help themselves move forward. That's how I'm going to word that. Right? But everybody that's in here, I think what you want you to think about is, what are you willing to do to make sure that you're solving your problems? That's what I want you to think about. What are you willing to do to make sure that you're solving your problems? Because by solving my problems, I absolutely increase the probability that I eat on plan, right? Because I would then be eating for the right reasons, which is, of course, eating to be healthy, eating to build my body, eating to have energy. If I'm eating for the right reasons, things tend to go better. So, Sing It, thank you very much for these questions, because I always feel like when I answer questions, it kind of clarifies the things that I was thinking about and wanting to make sure I explain properly. So I'm always happy for that. Pat, thanks for being here today. Jesse, thank you, and thank you again for the super sticker. I do appreciate it. It is very helpful. Everything that I will be making, I always try to put back in. I buy things like this for the channel so that I can make sure I present well. So it's good to, I appreciate when people donate. And let's see, and Sing It. So have a good rest of your day, guys. I look forward to talking to you next Monday for sure. And I would love to know if you have a topic you want me to cover. Put it in the comments. Not in the chat because this is closing in a second. Put it in the comments and check out the video. And feel free to share the video too. I wouldn't mind that. Have a good rest of your day, guys.